Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at one of the more interesting running shoes on the market. It's the Mizuno Neo Vista. Let's run with it. Before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video. This file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. I haven't tried a lot of Mizuno running shoes lately, so I was very excited when the Neo Vista came in. Saw a lot of good reviews, and I think the overall shape, silhouette, and design is incredibly unique, which really just draws you to it. Now this is a super trainer, so a highly cushioned plated daily trainer. Kind of sits between the conventional daily trainer and the super race day shoe. Kind of bridges that gap. So great for a runner that wants a lot of stack height with a plate through the midsole. The shoe costs $180, which is about what you expect for a super trainer, maybe slightly cheaper. A lot of them are kind of pushing up to the $200 price point. So for $180, I think that makes sense. We do have a ridiculous amount of stack height. I'm also happy to see they're pushing these numbers up. We have 44.5 in the heel and 36.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. So you're gonna have a ridiculous amount of stack height underfoot with this shoe. The Neo Vista weighs 9.4 ounces, which for its category leans to the heavier end of things, but when you consider it has over 44mm of stack height, I don't think it's too bad, and I think it works well within its intended use case, which I will touch on later in the review. The upper is a one-piece knit material, which actually does have a little bit of stretch and give to it. There's some slight elasticity to it. The tongue is the stretchiest part. You can really pull that to help kind of get your foot in and out of the shoe with a large pull tab, and then the knit collar is fairly elastic as well. Now, on previous reviews, I've talked about how I don't necessarily love one-piece knit uppers because if your foot isn't the perfect shape for the knit upper, things can kind of go sideways. However, I was actually quite impressed with this knit upper. It fit true to size, had a decent amount of room, didn't feel overly restrictive, which can be the case on some elastic knit uppers. And for me, the breathability was okay. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, about average, kind of on par with more typical engineered mesh. And then the big thing, the lockdown, I was actually quite happy. And I think it comes down to the heel counter. There is no structure really here with the heel counter. However, the shape of it is fairly aggressive, has a pretty steep slope towards your heel, which I think did a good job of keeping it in place without being really annoying or creating any blisters. So with all that being said, I was quite impressed. Yes, I do have a little bit of bunching on the tongue just because it's all one piece. When you pull the laces tight, the fabric tends to fold over, but for the most part, I was truly impressed with the lockdown comfort and fit here. There is an external lacing frame. I've seen this in a lot of other knit shoes like the Brooks Stealth Fit editions where you have two pieces of rope that run down the outside, and then the laces interact with that piece of rope that is stitched to the upper, so the laces themselves don't go directly through the upper. It does a decent job. I think it works quite well. Like I talked about before, a little bit of bunching with the tongue, but otherwise I was able to kind of get everything situated quite right. And while this upper did work really well for me, and a little bit plenty of room through the toe box, it may not work perfectly for your foot, especially maybe if you have a more narrow foot. You might be kind of moving around a bit in there. So just be on the lookout for that. But for me and my foot, I was quite impressed with this knit upper experience. And then for the star of the show, the midsole, they do have a new foam, which they're calling Mizuno Energy NXT. According to Mizuno, it's some type of EVA. They did something quite interesting to it because it doesn't feel like any standard EVA foam I've ever really tried. If I had to guess, they mixed it with something else or just did something completely different because this is incredibly soft and a bit mushy, has a little bit of spring and bounce to it, and just feels fun and soft underfoot. Really different than most other running shoes out there. And of course, to stabilize this large and soft midsole, we have a full-length glass fiber reinforced nylon plate, which really stiffens up the shoe, provides a great deal of stability to the midsole itself, and helps you take advantage of the aggressive rocker geometry. Something I do want to point out is if we flip the shoe over, yes, you can see the large gray wave plate, but the fact that we have this ginormous cutout down the center that runs pretty much the full length of the shoe, I do think it makes the midsole feel softer, mainly because it allows the bottom layer foam to expand on both sides, where if it was completely filled in, that necessarily wouldn't be the case. It also helps a little bit with weight savings, which I do think is important when the shoe weighs 9.4 ounces. As far as the outsole rubber coverage goes, you do have a solid amount here. It is a fairly smooth traction pattern, so I would keep it to more conventional surfaces. What is the best way to describe this midsole? Well, it is very soft and mushy with a little bit of energy return sprinkled in. Now, what kind of runs does this work for? Well, it was too soft for me on easier efforts. It was a bit of a chore to get through that thick slab of foam. And then on the other end of the spectrum for faster runs, it didn't feel very efficient. It's a somewhat heavy shoe, rather bulky and just super soft. Yes, I know you have a plate and a lot of other super trainers can push the pace, but for me, this didn't necessarily excel in that area. However, what I do love it for is that middle range of runs. The midsole experience is completely different from most other running shoes on the market. The plate does a good job of stabilizing and helping that really soft midsole move along. If anything, it feels a little bit softer compared to something maybe like the Nike Invincible with its Zoom X foam, especially as you get towards the forefoot. This has a little bit more squish to it. And honestly, I'm happy they put a plate in here. I think that was a nice add, mainly because when you have a midsole this soft, you need something else to kind of keep it all together and make it more efficient. Yes, I know this isn't the fastest plated daily trainer, but again, I think for that middle range of paces, this is something that comes alive and just feels fun underfoot. It feels like some large marshmallows that you get to kind of bounce along on, and it just gives you a completely different sensation than most other highly cushioned running shoes. I do think Mizuno has a winner here. Now, do I also think that the knit upper and the softness of the midsole may be a turnoff for some runners? Yes, but the fact that this shoe kind of separates itself from the pack, I think is a good thing, and I am excited to see what direction they take the Neo Vista. Would I potentially want a lighter, maybe more aggressive super trainer from Mizuno? Absolutely, but for this one here, it's just a fun shoe to run in, and if you're a fan of highly cushioned super trainers, I think you might want to give this one a potential shot, even though it's not the fastest plated trainer out there. Well, that concludes the review. Let me know in the comments what you think of Mizuno running shoes in general and what direction you would like to see them go. I would love to hear from you. I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.